Okay, we're live with Bhagavatam, and we want to jump in as soon as possible. I'll give you as little recap as possible. Basically, we got Vidura, a character named Vidura, um, who finally met Uddhava, who is Krishna's most confidential companion. And then Uddhava told him that Krishna is not alive anymore, not around anymore, and then starts talking about that. So we're going to pick up on that right here. It says, Uddhava's pain was incalculable. Ordinarily, when we lose a loved one, everybody has incalculable pain when you lose a loved one. However, in most cases, the pain actually subsides over time. And if you wonder why, it's actually as unromantic as it sounds. It's actually literally because you forget about the person over time. And the reason why you forget about the person over time is that you cease to have new experiences of the person to reinforce the pre-existing memories, which is why moving from a house or burning the belongings of a person can really help to get over grief. But in Krishna's case, how do you forget? Because he's Bhagavan and he saturates everything. So that's the point that's being made here. Because Uddhava also, someone who realizes Bhagavan intimately, of course, it goes without saying, they see God in everything all the time. That part's easy. So somebody like Uddhava, of course, he's seeing God everywhere all the time. And so therefore, how does he forget the fact that he used to have Krishna in front of him in the concrete form? And now he doesn't. So his pain is incalculable. Ordinarily, when we lose a loved one, our pain eventually subsides because we gradually forget about that person. But how could Uddhava ever forget even the fragrance of even the dust of even the feet of such a beautiful, sweethearted person as Krishna? So that's the other thing too, is depending on how important the person is in your life, it'll be less and less likely that you forget the person. So in Krishna's case, it's also unforgettable, which goes against the whole ridiculous idea that we once were with Krishna, but we forgot him. Krishna is so, who could tolerate separation from someone as sweet and kind as Krishna? Krishna is so generous that he grants boons even to those who hate him. This is what Uddhava was thinking, or at least this is what Shuka is saying. He's so generous that he gives gifts to people that hate him. But of course, he always gives an appropriate gift, a gift that you would actually want. So if you hate him, he's not going to give you a gift of love for him because this is not what you want. But he gives you what you want. He gives everybody what they want within the boundaries of what they can comprehend due to their karmas. Like, for example, right now, I might want things that I can't get because I have the momentum of my previous karma. But when that karma runs out, Krishna will give me those things that I want. That's what he does to everybody. So now Shuka is going to give some examples of people that hated Krishna but got, God, these classes are always dirty. People that hated Krishna but got incredible benedictions from him. So the foremost example of that is Chedi king, the king of Chedi. Chedi Raj, that's Shishupal. You'll hear the story of Shishupal in good detail at some point. But here it just says the king of Chedi insulted Krishna viciously. So that was during the coronation ceremony of Yudhishthir in front of hundreds of people and thousands of times over. It just continuously insulted Krishna. And Krishna gave him mukti. He liberated him from the bonds of karma and allowed him to achieve Brahman, which is what Shishupal wanted. He wanted to be God. All the warriors at Kurukshetra is another example. All the warriors that fought at Kurukshetra, they also all got mukti. Even the enemies. Krishna granted them the supreme destination, that's mukti, by allowing their eyes to drink the nectar of his lotus-like face while being relieved of their karmas by the touch of Arjuna's arrow. So the way that he calculated it, or the way that he had Yamaraj do a loophole, was to say whatever karmas you have in store for these people, they are exonerated of them by being pierced by Arjuna's arrows. And then whatever lack of focus they have on the spiritual, they're exonerated on that by having my face right in front of them. So they focus on this Param Brahman. So they will achieve mukti as well, or moksha. So these are two examples of how he gives exactly what people want, or the highest thing that they could possibly deserve, to everybody, even people that are aggressively against him. I don't know if they knew Miss Vinay. Probably, I'm not sure if they knew. Maybe that would violate their ego if they knew. Abhishek has an interesting question. If I don't trust myself with the right wish and I ask Krishna to give me what's good for me, what would he give? A lot of smart people do exactly that. You'll see that come up a lot of times in the Bhagavatam. Somebody great will ask somebody else. As a matter of fact, you've already seen it, right? Shuka told, the way that Parikshit questioned Shukadev was, his last question was, maybe there's questions that I should be asking that I don't know I should be asking, so please bring up those questions and answer them too. And then in a lot of cases, you'll see when the great sage meets a person, the person will say, I can get a benediction from you, but I don't know what is really the best thing for me. So can you just please pick the ideal benediction for me and give it to me? And if the ideal benediction for a person, just as you see in how Krishna treated Chediraj, Shishpal, and how he treated all the warriors at Kurukshetra, the ideal benediction differs from person to person. It's always going to be some type of permanent attainment and situation in the true self, but the degree to which that is experienced is going to differ from individual to individual to what they actually want. So some will only want to experience the supreme self and supreme reality as Brahman, others will want Paramatma, others will want Bhagavan. So right, Samantha, so somebody like you, if that's true, would you say the only thing I would want is to break free of soul contracts? You'd probably get Brahman. But because you have a nice heart, I can tell you might not know it yet, what you would actually want once you're free from all soul contracts. So you might get more than that from Krishna. So Uddhava is now going to speak. And he says, no one is greater than or equal to him. Asamurdha. No one is greater than or equal to him. He's the master of threes. Absolutely independent. What does it mean that he's the master of threes? There's a lot of important things in the universe which are forked into three. And so one of the ways of addressing Vishnu is a master of threes. For example, there's three gunas, Rajas, Tamas, Sattva. So if you say the master of threes, it means the master of the three gunas. What else is in threes? There's Mahavishnu, Kshirodakshay Vishnu, and Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Those are another threes. There's also the three Shaktis. There's three primary Shaktis, the Antaranga, Bahiranga, and Tatashta Shaktis. There's all kinds of threes. Generally, things fork into threes, two extremes in the middle. Or one thing with two borders. So he's described as the master of threes. He's absolutely independent. The goddess of fortune strives to fulfill his slightest desire. That's amazing. Everybody works really hard to get some fortune, but Krishna is different than that. He's not working hard to get fortune. He manifests fortune and it serves him. I would like to see that, Catherine. Immortal gods worship him. His feet are surrounded and honored by the sounds of their million crowns touching the floor. We are certainly his servants. So we are all certainly his servants now, Uddhava says, right? We are all certainly his servants. yet he put Ugrasena on the royal throne. So now when he says we, he's talking about the family of the Yadus. We were all certainly his servants. Remember fish with the moon? They never quite accepted Krishna as one of their family. They always thought of themselves as his servant. But Krishna never acted as if they were his servants. He put Ugrasen, his grandfather, on the royal throne and waited upon him with such careful and subservient manners, saying, Your Majesty, may I submit this before you? That's how attractive and cute and sweet and adorable Krishna is. He's the freaking most powerful thing ever, but he gives respect and power and deference to other people. That's actually one thing that you'll notice in the practical sense is people who are most disrespectful are the people who are the most, have the lowest self worth. And this is another thing when people mistake self-worth and ego disease. Ego disease is not where you have too much self-worth. It's where your self-worth is all messed up. And you have to try to constantly reinforce it. And it's just like penis thing. What is it with the compensation for having a small penis? And the guy always talks about how big his penis is. Or acts like it's big or something. So it's the same thing when you have bad self-worth, usually because of a childhood with bad parents. That bad parents simply means didn't show you that you were worth anything. Then you keep trying to get the feeling that you're worth something by sucking it out of people. But Krishna has so much ego and so much self-worth that he has no need whatsoever to be worshipped or respected by anybody. He fully worships and respects himself. He's independent, independently satisfied. And that sort of a person can respect and worship and give deference to everybody, no matter how small, no matter how insignificant. So this is the big thing that people don't get about humility. People think that humility is a low self-worth. That's low self-worth. Humility can only come when you have huge self-worth. Because you have so much surplus, your self-worth is already fulfilled, and now you can give other people self-worth. That's when humility happens. So people mistake things like confidence for ego. People mistake things like self-trust, self-worth, self-confidence for ego, as if it's the evil ego thing, but it's not. Miss Vinay asks, do you think Krishna felt lonely when he was treated so reverently? Yes. Although everyone's relationship with Krishna is perfectly fulfilling to both Krishna and the person, subjectively speaking. But objectively speaking, like you might, like somebody might like cheap wine, and somebody else might like really expensive wine. And the guy that likes cheap wine from the 7-Eleven, he likes that wine. He's drinking it and he likes it. And the guy who likes expensive wine looks at the guy drinking the cheap wine and thinks, ugh. But the guy drinking the cheap wine doesn't think, The guy drinking the cheap wine thinks this is great. So that's the way that subjectivity and taste and flavor works. So when you have relationship with Krishna, it's always the most fulfilling thing for you. But objectively speaking, the relationships which are walled or bordered by rules and formality are less dynamic than the ones which aren't. So Krishna has a little feeling of wanting the more dynamic, intimate relationships. And that's why once every 1,000 yugas he comes as Krishna in Vrindavan to show what that's like. I don't know if it's Mercury combustion chart that make you eager to prove yourself. I don't know that it's not, but it doesn't strike a bell with me. Don't you get your parents because you deserve them, need them as a result of your karma? Sure. So what does that disprove? Doesn't make any point. Yeah, And what do you want to do? You want to stick in your karma wheel for the rest of eternity? You have to make effort. Right, Kermit? I love that name. All right, so let's continue. Vidura is unable to. Let's see, how are we doing on time? Go right halfway. Vidura, unable to retain his composure now, Uddhava burst into tears. So after remembering Krishna treating Ugrasena so gently, treating him like a king, and making himself like a subject, he burst into tears and he says, "Oh, Vidura, when Krishna was just a baby, a she-demon with foul and hateful intent smeared virulent poison over her breast and suckled the child." So this is the first time in the Bhagavatam that you're hearing about this, I do believe. But this is famous in India. You've probably seen this depicted 100 times on TV. This is the first famous incident in Krishna's life. Hardly a week old, and a witch, an ogress, polymorphed into a beautiful lady, and came and wanted to nurse him. Because she's so beautiful, nobody suspected that she could be evil, because generally the outside corresponds to the inside. So the Krishna's mom and everybody was like, of course, here. But she was actually a polymorphed ogress, and she had put poison on her breast. And what happened? Krishna accepted the breast. And actually, this is one of the verses. I should probably find this verse. Aho bhakyam kulakutastanam verse. This is one of the verses that Shukadev heard that made him want to learn the Bhagavatam from his father Vyasadeva. It's so amazing that what Krishna did with this woman, this ogress, she came to kill him, but she came imitating a nurse or a mother. And so the way Krishna reacted with her was he made her his mother in Vaikuntha. Or a nurse. He made him, like in India or in the Vedic culture, mother isn't a term just for the biological mother. But it's for people that give milk and nourish and take care of a child, they're called the mother. That's why cow is called the mother. So he made this demoness get liberated, mukti, but not just merge into Brahman and become Brahman. She went to Vaikuntha to associate with Krishna directly, personally, as a loving mother. Because she had some desire to be his mother. Otherwise, she wouldn't have tried to assassinate him in that way. So it shows how he overlooks all of the flaws and finds the one good thing. And actually, the story of her is very interesting. Her backstory is very interesting. Previous to that incarnation as an ogress, she was the sister of Bali Maharaj. You'll know Bali Maharaj from a study of nakshatras because his tale is important in the Shravana nakshatra, because he's the one that Trivikram interacts with. So when Vishnu came as Trivikram and cheated Bali Maharaj, basically, out of all of his land, Bali Maharaj's sister was really pissed. But when she first saw the boy, she fell in love with him. When she first saw Vamana, the little young boyish-looking Vamana, come in, she fell in love with him in a motherly way. And then when he turned coat, basically, and took all the property from her brother, she hated him vehemently. So in her next birth, she became this ogress, and she tried to kill him as a mother. And then Krishna didn't really care about the fact that she tried to kill him. So what Uddhava is illustrating here in all these examples of Chedi Raj and the warriors of Kurukshetra and now Putana, the ogress, is how Krishna is kind. He's like incredibly kind. And he gives and gives and gives even to people who are aggressive against him. So when Krishna was just a baby, a she-demon with foul and hateful intent. This is really unusual because usually the intent is very important. Smeared virulent poison on her breast and suckled the child. Krishna made her his beloved nurse in the spiritual world of liberation. Who could be more merciful than he? Where can my heart find shelter except in him? Such demons are somehow more fortunate than us, Uddhava says. How is it that these demons are luckier than we are? Uddhava is saying to Vidura. The path of enmity completely enwraps their thoughts in the all-attractive. So this is really the goal. The goal is to get your heart wrapped around Bhagavan. And that's done by emotion. The strongest emotion is love, but hate also is like a mirror image of love. So hate really passionately engages you in a subject. And these demons that were aggressive towards Krishna and hated Krishna, they wound up with their hearts wrapped around Krishna, not in a anukula way, in a pratikula way, not in a favorable way, but in an antagonistic way. But still, they got their hearts wrapped around Krishna. And so they get some great result from that. But what Uddhava is saying now is they're luckier than us because they have more passion for Krishna than we have. We're so analytical and philosophical about this whole thing. The path of enmity completely enwraps their thoughts in the all-attractive. Thus they are always with him and see him coming towards them, carrying his wondrous discus and other weapons, riding on the back of Tarksha's son, the eagle Garuda. So that's his thing. Because Uddhava went to Vrindavan and met Radharani and the gopis, he knows, he has a glimpse of the taste of passionate love for Krishna. And that's why he's thinking even the demons are luckier than we are. Because our relationship with Krishna has some formality and officialness to it. But the demons, their relationship to Krishna feels more like the Vrajabasis, feels more like the Vrindavan passion. Natalia, not to diverge into like a parenting diatribe, but the child is the sponge that absorbs what the parent gives. And so if the child hates the parent, it's not the child's fault. And this is just the whole message of the Rohini Nakshatra, is that you are what you eat. And the milk that you get is the way your body develops. And so when you get neglect, or when you get whatever you get from your parents is what you're going to feel for them. So let's go ahead and start up on chapter 3. Because for some reason, sometimes the chapter breaks in the original Bhagavatam don't make all that much sense. But so for some reason, in the middle of Vidura's monologue, of Yudhishthira's, in the middle of Uddhava's monologue, for some reason they break the chapter and they start chapter 3. Because now, after having mentioned the ogress, Putana, now Uddhava is going to start recounting Krishna's activities. And so that's basically chapter 3. To save himself and Vidura from falling into an abyss of depression over the loss of all attractive Krishna, Uddhava began to recount Krishna's pastimes. So he's going to start with Krishna's, they're called pastimes. Pastimes is a translation that I got from the ISKCON books and Prabhupada's translation of the word lila. It's kind of a cool translation because it means the way that you pass your time. It's not work. Kind of another way to translate lila that's more to the point is play as opposed to work. Karma as opposed to lila is work as opposed to play. So when you say Krishna's pastimes, it means the way that he plays. The word is lila. So Uddhava starts to talk about Krishna lila, and he's going to start with Krishna's Vrindavan lila. So he says, and he starts with why he manifests. He was begged, Uddhava says, begged by Brahma on behalf of the well-being of the earth. So the earth goddess went to Brahma to ask for help because she was being exploited by the military. And so Brahma then went to Vishnu, and then Vishnu said, okay, I'll do an avatar now. And so Vishnu appeared as Krishna. He took birth from Devaki and Vasudeva as a captive of the Bhoja king. His father, afraid of what Kansa, the Bhoja king, would do to the child, sent him to be raised in Nanda's pastoral Vraja. He was there for 11 years with his brother Baladev, like a hidden flame. Okay, so there's a couple little points. So the avatar at the end of Dwapara Yuga comes when the earth goes to Brahma, and then Brahma goes to Vishnu and asks for an avatar. And then the avatar comes through Devaki with the father as Vasudeva. But Devaki and Vasudeva are imprisoned by Kansa at the time. You'll find out why later. So because the father and mother are afraid that the child's going to get killed because Kansa has killed the previous 7 children, I believe, they therefore scoot them away. Balaram. Anyway, some of the details are a little bit not so fresh in my head, but they get Krishna to leave. They get Krishna to escape. Now, how could Krishna escape when they couldn't escape? Well, they didn't really try to escape. And the reason why Krishna could escape is because he has this magic power working to fulfill his play. And so actually all the guards fell asleep when he was born. So anyway, they got him out of the city and they took him to a relative nearby named Nanda, who was a king amongst agriculturalists, amongst the farmers. So he was like a farmer king. He was related to the king's family that Krishna was born into, but he wasn't a king of government. Like he wasn't a king of a city, he was a king of a town or a pasture. He was the king of Vraja. And then Krishna stayed there with his brother because don't forget there's polygamy in Dwapara Yuga. So Krishna's father had 9 wives. So Krishna has a brother from another mother, literally. And that's Balaram. So he lived there with Balaram. When Krishna's father with this one wife was imprisoned, the other wives went also to Nanda to have some place to live and be safe. So Krishna lived there, and now Uddhava said it was for 11 years, which is weird because a boy doesn't hit puberty until 12 years old. But Rupa Goswami comments on this point. Roughly 12, right? So Rupa Goswami comments on the point that not all children mature at the same rate. And he says, in fact, the most accelerated rate of maturity is 50% more than average. And he says that Krishna has the most accelerated rate of maturity. So that by the time he was 10 years old, his physical maturity was 15. So by the time he's 11, he's like 17. And that does make sense because it's at 11 years old that most of the romantic stuff happens. And it says he's like a little, actually, Simone. So the reason why it worked slightly, the reason why it slightly worked is because Nanda's wife had a child, but also Krishna's magic has made all of them fall asleep, so they didn't know who was who. So Krishna's father was the only one awake, and he took Krishna as an infant and swapped the kids. And then this sister of Krishna is also not just an ordinary whelp. So she's actually Durga. And so Kansa worshipped Durga. So when Kansa picked her up to kill her, she turned into Durga and Kansa freaked out. And totally lost his mind for several months. And she just went away. And that put Kansa into some serious mental illness for a long time. So yeah, this has to be, at least somebody could make an anime of this or something. Now how he grew up in this pastoral setting, incognito, like a hidden flame. There, the Almighty enjoyed wandering amidst the garden groves on the Yamuna shore. That's that line from a famous 17th century or 18th century song, or 19th century song, Yamuna Tira Vanachari. He enjoyed wandering amongst the garden groves on the Yamuna shore, surrounded by his young friends and their calves, while flocks of birds sang in the trees. That's what he was growing up with. That's how Krishna, that's his soil. When flocks of birds sang in the trees, the residents of Vraja witnessed the Almighty behaving as a child. Incredibly, they saw the Almighty cry and laugh, and were struck with wonder when he would sometimes become as brave as a lion cub. They were struck with wonder not when he was crying and laughing, but when he would sometimes be not an ordinary child. The Almighty certainly displayed his limitless reservoir of opulence in Vraja as a wealth of beautiful cows and bulls. So actually, his true wealth, Uddhava is saying, was there in Vraja, not in Dwarka with jewels and castles. It was in Vraja with cows and birds and rivers and grass. Wandering with them and the boys who cared for them, Krishna would play a flute and make everyone completely carefree. It's just, Vastu. There's the Nirvana Vyakulam. There's a poem about the flute, that the waves of the flute are the sound of nirvana. It makes everybody completely carefree. Right, Justin? Yeah, there is a cartoon, isn't there? The problem with that cartoon is they make it so family friendly, and they make it so like that cartoon Krishna Raja something. It's pretty good, but it just like is afraid to be real. You need somebody who isn't religious and who isn't traditional, but who really understands the Bhagavatam to make a drama or a movie or an anime about it. So here he is in Vrindavan and carefree. You know, with pastures and everything. But what's going on? What about this situation that he fled from? Did that ever come after him? Yeah, came after him constantly. So the Boja king, the king who has his parents imprisoned, he's knows that, wait a minute, there was a child born, and it turned out to be Durga. And then actually Narada Muni came to Bojaraj, to Kamsa, and said, you know why that was Durga? Because Vishnu was born and escaped, and she came and took his place. Because she's Maya, so she was the illusory form of it. So then why did Narada Muni tell him that? Why didn't Narada Muni let Krishna relax? Because Krishna doesn't want to relax. What is relaxation? Relaxation is not. Relaxation is what you need in between exciting events. Krishna wants excitement. Everybody wants peace and inner peace. It's just because our lives are miserable and we just want a relief from it. But Krishna doesn't want relief. He doesn't want inner peace. He wants excitement. So Narada Muni, who loves Krishna, went and told Bojaraj, Krishna is out there. He's somewhere. You should find him and kill him. And so that caused the Bojaraj to send out assassins constantly, looking for him everywhere. And so he employed wizards and shapeshifters, just like the ogres we just mentioned, but the child playfully unraveled them all as they approached, as if they were toys. Let's see, I think this will be the last paragraph we do. Oh no, we'll do this whole little section, it's almost done. When his friends died from drinking poisoned water, he arrested the great poisonous serpent and restored the water to its natural state. So these are just little calming attractions of the tales that you'll hear. He wanted to see wealth put to its proper use, so he convinced the king of the cowherds to give it all to the intellectuals who would use it for serving the cows. Raja then faced extreme calamity when Indra flooded the land with rain, furiously insulted by their neglect of his worship. So the thing with the poisonous water, there was a Naga who was fleeing from Garuda, and he made a little hidden palace under the water in the Yamuna River. But that poisoned the Yamuna, and so people in Vrindavan started to die. So Krishna had revived them and then fought this dragon and got him out of the river and then purified the water. But it's super interesting how he did that. Then the long tale of that will be told in the Bhagavatam. Then the second thing about wanting wealth to be put to good use, he didn't like the fact that his townspeople were spending tons of wealth on worshiping Indra. He said, wouldn't it be better to be practical with his wealth? Give it to the teachers, give it to the cows, give it to the mothers, give it to the people who need it. Why are you giving it to Indra? You can't even see Indra. You think you need to worship Indra to get rain. This is a famous quote from Krishna. You think you need to worship Indra to get rain, but nobody lives in the ocean worshiping Indra, and it rains on the ocean. This is a famous thing that he told his parents when he was 6 years old. And then they said, all right, then we'll do what you said. And then Indra got pissed off and tried to attack them. And then he saved them from that. Yeah, Catherine, you can use my book as the starting point. I wonder how far the delay is, because the comments come in like 10 minutes after I say something. So Krishna affectionately saved everyone by playfully using the cow's hill as an umbrella. So that's how he saved them from Indra. And then the final paragraph in the section about Vrindavan. Then, seeing the face of the dark night brightened by the shining autumn moon, he delightfully ornamented. Wow, he's the ornament. He delightfully ornamented a circle of women while singing intimately melodious poems. How can you ornament a circle of beautiful women? You must be incredibly beautiful. So that's Uddhava's brief remembrance of Krishna's play in Vrindavan. And the next paragraph is going to go into Krishna's play in Mathura. And then he's going to give a couple of paragraphs about Dwarka, which is where he actually knew him. And then he's also going to talk about Krishna in Hastinapur. And that'll be the rest of chapter 3. Point to point. What if all this is metaphor? It certainly is metaphor. But metaphor itself is a reality, isn't it? Reality has metaphorical value. And if you're wondering if it's metaphor or not metaphor, it's just because you haven't worked with this enough. You haven't done your work, your sadhana, and your practice to understand the reality, to see, to taste, to feel the reality of it. All right, guys, I'm going to leave you for today and see you again tomorrow, where we're going to pick up about Krishna in Mathura. Now, if you have unanswered questions from today's thing, then get here on time, like early tomorrow. I know I don't always start at the same time, but kind of be on the lookout for this and ask the questions. It'll be okay. If you ask questions about today's stream, you can ask them tomorrow. That's cool. All right, guys.